Welcome, everybody. It's Omondi Juma here from the Man United Agenda and in cooperation with Full Time Sports Network. And I'm joined today with Andrew Mensah. Andrew, we know each other through family, friends, and things. Network. And I'm joined today with Andrew Mensah. Andrew, we know each other through family, friends, and things. Sorry about that. Yeah, let's start again. We're going to bit of a feedback there. Andrew, yeah, it's lovely to meet you, Andrew. Welcome to the channel. You know what we do here. We talk all about all things football, but I'm delighted today to sort of showcase you and your talents and your journey in football as well, because I know it's going to be interesting to watch this. But you've got a deep journey in the game. You've taken a different path to most others, and I'm really impressed with what you've done with your football talents and what your desires are with the game. So, Andrew, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? And what made you fall in love with football?
So yeah, I was born in London. Well, first and foremost, actually, thank you for actually having me on. So I really appreciate your time and your efforts to get me on the channel. So thank you first and foremost. But yeah, I was born in London. I was born in London, and I guess my passion for football. I'm gonna say probably like most people, I guess maybe watching my father, obviously watching football from a very young age. That kind of like drew me into the excitement and obviously the passion of actually watching football, but at the same time even playing football. And it's funny because I think like one of the first games I really remember was actually, not that it's a lie, actually. I remember World Cup 90 vaguely. I recall World Cup 90 very well. But one of the first games I really remember like being like maybe emotionally involved in, I would say I think it was the Man United, being on the Man United channel, was Man United versus Barcelona 99 at the Camp Nou. So that was the first game I remember watching really with my family, sitting down and watching those goals go in. So that season specifically for me was quite instrumental by way of actually watching football, and the Champions League specifically, I would say as well, because I think the Champions League, I mean, like for many people, I hold it quite dear to my heart, So I guess that was my kind of like my introduction into football. Then obviously I went on to obviously play football, youth football. I probably got into football quite late. So I think I started playing football at the age of like, say, 10 or 11. And from there, I was taken to my first football game as well. I went to QPR versus Arsenal at Loftus Road with a close friend. But in regards to playing football, I got involved in football quite late. And then I ended up representing my borough for the London Youth Games at the age of 14. So that was, I'll say, quite a proud moment for me, because I guess that was ultimately probably the highest level I kind of played. But I think my progression in football happened quite late as to, not that I got good at a later age, but by the time my talent was kind of recognized, I was 14/15. And I guess if we're kind of like drawing comparison with 2022, I mean, kids are being brought into the academy at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8. And I guess obviously at the age of 14/15, if I'm playing football at half decent level, and again, if I'm drawing it in comparison to now, it might be considered a little bit late. So there are some, not regrets as such, but there's a part of me that wishes, had I got involved in football maybe at a younger age, who knows, things might be a little bit different. But at the same time, I think it's a part of my story, and it's probably the reason why I'm so passionate about whether it's talent identification or whether it's coaching, and also as we'll go on to talk about Ghanaian football. But yeah, my story continued really, if I'm honest. So like, I want to say 16, I kind of like exited football, and I found myself very quickly wanting to get involved in coaching. And it's really weird, and I don't know if anyone else does this as well. So like, I remember the age of, I want to say 16, maybe a little bit older, I used to watch, again, Champions League football, and I used to think to myself, I'm thinking Real Madrid specifically, because I remember when they won the Champions League in 2000, but that 2000/2001 squad, I used to look at quite intently and not necessarily scrutinize, but I used to look at their squad and think to myself, you know what, I wouldn't play him there. I'd play him here, and I'd do this and I'd do that. And I guess that's where my interest kind of like began. And then from there, I did my level 1, joined a local club in terms of coaching, stayed there for a good 3-4 seasons. And then someone from there, thankfully, was involved at Fulham Football Club, and he recommended me to join Fulham Football Club. And I guess that's where my journey in terms of, I don't want to say professionalism, but my journey in professional football kind of began as to, that's where it began, really, coaching and talent identification, because a lot of things kind of happened by good fortune and actually accident, really, because I think the person who I kind of like paired up with, I went on to work with him for a number of years. And I guess when I first joined Fulham, he had an independent football academy, and from him having a football independent academy, within months he became coordinator, and talent. Sorry, he became a talent identification coordinator. And because I was very young, and not that I didn't have much going on because I was going to uni, but because I had a lot of free time, I was able to dedicate a lot of time to something that I was really, really passionate about. And I was going to university actually doing sports and exercise science. So the things kind of went hand in hand, if that makes any sense. So again, obviously, because I was really, really passionate about.
So going back, and at a young age, you've done your level 1.
Yeah, so I did my level 1 at 16. So the first opportunity to get my level 1 done, I got it done straight away.
Is it difficult?
Truth be told, I think anyone who's probably done their level 1 before would understand. I don't want to play down the qualification, because I think it's really, really important as to the entry point into coaching. I think it teaches you some very, very good fundamentals. But no, I wouldn't say it's difficult. I think it provides you with fundamentals, and I guess some structure in regards to actually how to coach. But the same, how to coach, really.
Yeah. So how do you feel like being at such a young age? Suddenly you're at Fulham Football Club. Was that a bit intimidating for you, sort of putting on sessions and that, when you're surrounded by sort of seniors and peers and people who've been involved in the game for years?
It was, and I think naturally, I don't know how I'm going to come across obviously in his interview, but naturally, and certainly back then I was a very, very shy person. So things such as putting on coaching sessions and stuff of that nature, speaking in interviews, that's not something that came to me naturally. So I had to kind of like develop that type of confidence to go on to put on good sessions and things kind of like of that nature. And that even goes hand in hand in regards to actually talent identification, because I fell into talent identification by accident, in that there was a shortage of players actually coming into the club on trial. But like, to your question in regards to like being intimidated, I guess at the time, and I'll say that was probably like 2007/8, traditionally you would have seen a lot of older people being your scouts, being involved in senior recruitment. And in 2000, I was born in 1985. So, I mean, you do the maths, really. That 2008, I want to say, 20. I was early 20s, really. Yeah, 95, 2005. So I was like 22/23. So 23 years of age, and I was kind of like surrounded by senior scouts. And then actually, no, I'm not going to say luckily. What I'll say is, because I was involved and around a lot of senior staff quite often, because obviously because I was at uni, I had a lot of time. So I'd often be at the club in my free time. I'd often get the opportunity to watch first team sessions with Roy Hodgson. I get the opportunity to watch the under-21s. I get a lot of the opportunity to do that. Literally, people say, just go outside, just go watch the sessions, or go watch the 18s. And they allow me to throw the balls into them and all that type of stuff. And not necessarily have a kick around, but be quite close, up and personal, and get an opportunity to watch things firsthand, obviously taking a lot of that information. But a lot of that led me to actually knowing the characteristics of a player, knowing what a footballer looks like, the profile. And in so, quite quickly, and at the same time, I was coaching at a very good level as well. So quite quickly, usually you get a kid who will go on trial at the club, and then hopefully they'll sign. And when you're a new scout, that can be quite a difficult process as to that happening. But the first kid I found, I literally picked up the phone and I said, I found a kid, and I think he needs to be brought into the club immediately. And because I hadn't scouted a kid into the club previously, there was a slight hesitation because I hadn't. But obviously, because I knew the level, there was a level of trust. So I was asked to kind of bring the kid to a centre, and they'll come down and have a look firsthand. They looked at the kid, said, no, he needs to sign. So they were going to skip the phase of him going on trial, all that type of stuff. It was like, no, he needs to come into the club the following morning. He needs to train with the under 11s, and he will probably sign forms. So if possible, make sure you bring dad, mum, etc., etc. So that was a big moment for me because, yeah, I at that point, I don't want to say I became a man, but I became someone who it was kind of confirmed. I knew the level, and probably is a phrase which probably goes around quite often in football. Do you know a player? You know, do you know what a player looks like? You know, as to the profile, you know, everyone says they know what a player looks like, but have you got a kid signed before? And all that type of stuff. And
so,
I guess,
Andrew, is it the actual eye test, or do you have to sort of speak to the player as well to understand where they're at with their mindset as well and their professionalism and how much dedication they have? Because there's so many factors, it seems, into
do you
sort
know
of
what? That's a very, very good question. That's a very good question. And I recently did my talent identification, like level 2, and that kind of like, and I guess if I'm honest, because I haven't been involved in football, like attached to a professional football club in a while, it was a great eye opener because I think we went over things such as that as to the characteristics of a player. And obviously football is kind of developed now where you kind of like need to take into consideration the kids' character, which I think was important back then, but their mental health, you know, and their personality and things of that nature. But I would say specifically at that time, it was like that day and time, it was the eye test. I saw a kid and I was like, no, he's a level and he needs to be brought in very quickly. Because at that time, I mean, Arsenal have always been very, very prominent, but I knew scouts from Arsenal, and if I didn't see him, they would have seen him in no time at all. So it was a case of I needed to pick up the phone and action that very, very quickly.
Andrew, what I want to do, because we've got a few people in the comments commenting in, so I'm just going to go through a few of the comments and give a shout out to a couple of people. We've got Matthew Bassett watching. As you can see, he's a Sunday League footballer. He was on the show with us earlier. Hey, he's saying good evening all the way from Birmingham. He said, big up everyone in the show and in the chat. Hi, Matthew. Gavin Ward as well, saying good evening, fellas. Bath time with Vaughan, one of my tactical geniuses on the show. He's been abroad and played football. He's asking here, is Heart of Oak, that the team from Ghana, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, one of the like the mainstays and one of the, I'll say one of two like big sides in Ghana.
Just going through Footmoss Sports Talk, saying Ghana, big up. UK Strange Things locked in and he's enjoying it so far. Bath saying Loughborough, I think that's a big university, is it, for sports and that kind of thing. Were you associated with Loughborough at all?
No, I wasn't. No, so I went to the University of Bedfordshire. So that's the university I went to.
Okay, so Bath Time's also saying Andrew's an excellent speaker now, so big up.
Thank you.
It's good evening from Solo. He's our boss man for the Man United agenda. Bath Time saying here, was coaching divided up into ball skills, set pieces, physical tactics, etc.? And did Andrew participate in all or some of them? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, do you know, like at my time at Fulham, it's funny because I'm going through a phase now where I'm asking questions of myself where, like, at my time at Fulham, I want to say from that, say 2005 up until like say 2010 and even beyond into like 2000, even like 15, I worked primarily with kids who were between the age of like say 5, 6 up until like say 11, maybe even like 14. That I would say was where my focus was, or where I felt that they were my strengths. But I did have an eye for kids who were older, and obviously did coach older kids as well. But specifically when I was at Fulham, I did the centres. I managed the centres in Northwest London. I did the Fulham under 7s. But as to the actual question, and the reason why I say a lot of that was like ball skills was particularly important at those early ages, particularly between, say, well, the younger years up until like 10, 11. It's important all the way through. But at those ages, I think it's really, really important you kind of like lay the foundations for the kids to be able to master the ball and then be very, very effective in the game. Set pieces, not so much at that age, or specifically with what the aims and objectives were at the time. Physically, we know that's really, really important. So again, obviously, not necessarily in relation to coaching, but certainly when you're a scout, you kind of look at a number of things really. But when I'm scouting and I'm trying to scan the pitch very, very quickly, I look for someone who's going to do someone who's doing something technically very, very good, or I look for physique. I mean, because ultimately, I think one of the early things I was kind of taught was that I was always told the story about oh my god, I forgot his name. It's a shame, but the story was around Chelsea, and I think the story and the person they used was maybe John Terry at the time. But I guess I guess what they were saying is like top players need players to play with, you know? And I think it's really, really important to understand the journey of a kid from the age of 6 up until 18. And if you haven't done that journey before, it can be very, very, I don't want to say it can be very, very difficult, but I think it's beneficial you've seen that journey before. And if you've seen that journey before, if you see a kid at the age of, just say 6, 7, 8, or even 10, 11, you have an idea of what he's going to look like at the age of 18 or 14 and stuff like that. Or you can even draw a comparison between the kid and his parents, you know, and you know roughly what the kid is going to look like. And technically, it might not be all the way there yet, but you know, with time, that will come. And I guess that was the importance of the talent centers at that time, because you can have a kid who physically looked great, all right, and you knew he had the, you know, he had the physique to open his legs up in the game. It might not quite be there yet, but you would create an atmosphere or an environment where you can work on him technically, work on him opening his legs up, work on him driving with the ball, and just begin to like lay the foundations for him potentially when he goes on to move on to, I don't know, different phase of play or different phase in obviously his education at 11 plus.
Andrew, there's loads of questions coming in, but I just want to add about the physical side of things. I think in English football, me growing up myself as well, they always look for like big 15-year-olds who are 6 foot tall. They would be much more beneficial to the game than someone who's like short and skillful. What do you think about Dutch football in that respect, and the way they sort of focus on technique rather than physicality and allow it to come on, develop? Do you think that's where English football's going wrong?
I want to say where football English went wrong, because do you know, we're looking up. See, for me, it is no surprise England are where they are now. And I know people may go, oh, what's he going to say next? And I mean in regards to our success. So like I hear a lot of pessimism in regards to, no, we've come off, this is a purple patch actually. You know, we've come off the back of the European finals, and we've come off the back of, I think England won a European Championship this summer. I forget what age group it was, but I know someone who participated in that. So we won a European Championship this summer. We came off the final of the European Championship like a year or 2 years ago. We won the World Cup semi-final, I think maybe 2 years before that as well. So this is a real purple patch. And for me, this is of no surprise, because I think this has been coming from the early 2000s. So I think England got knocked out in Euro 2000 or Euro 2004. I think it was Euro 2000 in the group stages. And then from there, I think there was a big shake-up, in regards to how English football should go on by way of actually like changing the education. So it's taken 10, 15, even 20 years to get to this point where the work that has been done, we're now bearing the fruit of it. So you've got your, like, we weren't seeing a Foden. We weren't seeing those type of players, you know, previously. You know, the Raheem Sterlings, all that type of stuff. We weren't seeing that before, you know. And I think, like, I know we've had, you see that, not that perspective, but the idea of an English player where they're big, strong, and not necessarily technical. Yeah. I think that was yesteryear, and I think we're living in a different age and a different time now, where the kids that we have are technical and have the ability to make an impact on the world stage. And I guess the pressure that Gareth Southgate has is he now kind of has the tools at his disposal, and we would like him to deliver. I don't want to put that much pressure on him, but we would like him to deliver, I mean, this Christmas.
Just want to say hi to A-Bub. She's saying hello. She's enjoying the show. Also, all the way from Australia, Mark Edmund. How you doing, Mark? Andy Herbert as well. He's saying big up to Omondi and Andrew. Heart of Oak and Asante. These are two big sides, are they, in Ghana?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Fulham, Chelsea, Palace, Arsenal, and so on. They battle for a lot of young kids to sign, says Footmoss.
Very much so.
Down in London, so many youth players to look at. Yeah, big talent pool, isn't there? I always say West London's the best for talent. Bath Time saying, was Smalling at around the time?
See, that was that sort of 2010-ish period as well. So I knew the scout, I'll say his name. So Barry Dunn was the individual who brought Chris Smalling in. And again, do you know, I find it really, really interesting, because what I find is there's like Chris Smalling, and if you even know William Ekong, he plays for, come on, I think he got relegated, Watford. So I probably need to have a conversation with him, or I have spoken to him about this actually. So there, some of the stories as to these kids coming into the club, more often than not, like they're amazing. Like the Chris Smalling one, I don't really know very, very well, but William Ekong, when he came into the club, because I don't know if it's noted down as to him playing for Fulham or going on trial at Fulham, then he went to Tottenham, and then he went elsewhere, and then eventually he found his way, obviously, in the football pyramid. So with William Ekong specifically, he was brought into the club on one of those trial days, and I don't remember the scout who brought him in. I think it was a guy named Ricardo, and I don't think Ricardo was there the day of the trial. But William then, he performed well, but not well enough to get trial. We're all looking at the kid and thinking he's a footballer. He's clearly a footballer, but he lacks some of the fundamentals in terms of technically. William wasn't very, very good. I don't want to say that. No, he wasn't the level at the time, and he needed one or two things to improve upon. Some of the fundamentals he wasn't doing very well. So William Ekong is a centre half, so he wasn't heading the ball very well. He wasn't bringing the ball down very well, and he wasn't distributing the ball very well. But he was defending quite good. But you couldn't bring him into the academy fold, because it will be very, very clear he wasn't the level. So he needed some coaching outside for about, say, 5-6 weeks to bring him back into the trial environment for him to then push on. So it was kind of like a closed case. It was a case of like, he wasn't a level, it's a shame, and we move on. But like, for some strange reason, it was something that kind of like played on my mind that day and then the following day. And then I asked if I can get his details to make contact with him. And I eventually made contact with him, and then we didn't bring him in. I actually had to talk. He lived in Bishop Stortford, and I lived obviously in West London, so I couldn't actually give him one-to-one coaching. So I had to literally on the phone coach him and tell him what he needed to do pretty much every day or every other day as to the things that he needed to work on. Then he came back in for another trial. Eventually came into the club. He was successful. Then he was released, but people there believed he was of the level, and he was taken to Tottenham.
Wow. And what age is this for the dude?
He was 16. And actually, I took him to Liverpool. I took him to Liverpool as well. So I took him to Liverpool. Me and him went to Liverpool. He didn't do well at Liverpool. And then he went to Tottenham.
What do you think about the Smalling? Because that's a big story, isn't it? Playing non-league and suddenly being caught up. I think Roy Hodgson takes a lot of credit for that, doesn't he?
He does, and I think he should do. I mean, in regards to bringing him into the fold, and obviously, I guess he would have done a lot of coaching with Chris Smalling. I think that there would have been other individuals as well, because I've heard loads of stories of people like keeping him after sessions and doing all that type of stuff as well. That would have been really, really important, because the gap, I'm going to say at that time, from non-league to certainly Premier League football is quite big. It's massive actually. But what I would say now as to like non-league football and let's say professional football, I think the pathway is completely different. I think what you're finding now is the kids, or no, I don't want to call them kids, but the players at non-league football, they are, they're the level, or, they just need to be spotted. People just need to kind of like take time with them and understand, no, bring him into the fold, and he might need to be involved in a setup for a month or two, have them there for like a month or two on trial, and then see where it goes. So you're going to find a lot of success in the coming years in regards to kids or players playing at non-league football and then taking that step up. I think that's a very, very good route. Once upon a time, that wasn't available.
Just going to go through a lot of these comments because they're coming through now. Football Moss is saying, Ike, Ugbo, Chelsea, Dick Duran, and so many others. Gavin Ward saying, did you ever overlook a player that went on to top level? Do you want to quickly answer that?
I don't know. That must, you know what? I'm going to be very, very honest. I've heard, do you know what? I heard a story in regard, like for example, like the Harry Kane one. So I have not picked up Harry Kane before, but what I'm saying is like I watched Harry Kane play at the age of 16 and 17, or maybe 18. Sorry, I watched, I think it was Tottenham under 18s and FA Youth Cup. And you never ever would have believed Harry Kane would have went on to be England's all-time leading scorer. So that's one that's not one I found, but I guess what I'm saying is like you wouldn't have believed that at the time. And I'm quite comfortable, and I'm quite sure there are a number of other individuals that might have said the same sort of thing. And what was the question? Have I? Oh,
so just have you ever overlooked a player that went on to make it big?
There are many kids which I'm quite proud of who like might have got released at academy level or in the centres who personally I believed they were the level, but there's only so many kids you can take at a professional football club that went on to make it. So I'm very, very proud of the kids that went on to make it.
We're going to fly through some of these questions. Gavin Ward said, I suppose it's difficult to judge a player until they go through puberty to the physical side of things. bit like Harry Kane there. Maybe he developed late. Bath Time saying England are like world champions at loads of different youth levels. I'll say hi to Tyrone Williams. He's saying, I hope the English scouts are finally caught up with Spain. The likes of Foden remind me of the diminutive footballers of Xavi and Iniesta. Those type of ballers scouts should be looking at. There's a lot of futsal now, isn't there, being played by youngsters? Big up from Football United TV. He's also saying it's a shame that Southgate is in charge of England. They would benefit from someone like Graham Potter in charge. We just go through and then you can anyone you want to touch on. Anthony Herbert saying, Andrew, what's the best advice you give to young players today? We'll come back to that. Good evening from MUFC to both of us. Football Moss is saying, but do agents talk and help kids if need be, or is it straight cutthroat and nobody talks about the kids they're scouting? And Bartham saying, was it clear Roy Hodgson was a continental manager compared to the others with his ideas and views? And finally, Barry Hales, Fulham legend, isn't he? Was non-league and went on to play for Bristol Rovers, then signed for Fulham as a striker. So anything you want to touch on there?
I want to try to touch on the things that I remember. So I know someone mentioned something in regards to agents. So, do you know, and I'm not going to use the word unfortunate. I will use the word unfortunate. I think there are good agents, obviously, and there's bad agents. And I think if we're very honest, and obviously we're adults, so we can have an honest conversation. We live in a world where people are kind of like out for themselves, and I think if you're with an agent who, let's say, if you're with a bad agent, then more often than not they're going to give you advice which is going to be beneficial to them in regards to maybe taking a move or going in a different direction. So I think very recently, I think there was even an interview on TalkSport where an agent, I think, was on the Simon Jordan, and I forget the other one. He used to do the transfer deadline. Jim.
Yeah, Jim. The show, the 10 a.m. show.
10 a.m. show. Yes,
Jim White. Is it?
Thank you, Jim White. So very recently he was on there, and he didn't really come across very well because I think there was a kid who, not that he did wrong, but didn't give the kid the correct advice, and the kid eventually left Liverpool and is now playing in the fourth tier of Spanish football. So that's a good example of someone who was kind of maybe looking out for themselves, and ultimately it was to the detriment of the kid. But I think there's agents maybe coming into the game now who previously were academy footballers or professional footballers who have been there and done it before, who can offer advice to these kids in regards to what is the best fit and what's the best thing for you at this moment in time. And because, again, they've seen the process before, they can give them advice as to the here and now, but at the same time, what is to come. So it can be very, very difficult, that one.
Okay, so what do you think about the Palace documentary on the Youth Academy? Reality or drama? Is in a word?
I've not seen that, and I've actually, I haven't seen that. But I don't know why I've stayed away from some of these documentaries recently. So I know the one on South London is out, and I've seen bits and pieces of that. I heard the one on Crystal Palace. I haven't seen much of that, and I haven't even seen much of the Arsenal documentary.
You're too busy, Andrew. Super Nick, how you doing? Super Nick, nice to see you come and join us. Tyrone Williams is asking, Emiliano Sala tragedy was a definite result of bad agent, not caring about the well-being of the player. He was supposed to be looking after the player. May rest in peace. Obviously, we know he was in a plane crash. And Bath Times asking, Mbappe's dad demanded 7 million, I think, from Arsenal when he was 16 years old. Gavin Ward saying, how much is it a pain to deal with agents these days? So a lot of questions about agents and that kind of thing. We're going to move on a little bit. We just go because hopefully you're going to come back because we haven't time permitting. We don't really have much time to sort of cover everything, but really enjoying your insight into the game and all the work you've done. But I just want to talk about Ghanaian football and African football because I remember Pele after the 1990 World Cup and Cameroon doing so well. I think you mentioned that earlier about that was the first World Cup you remember. Yeah. But he was saying by the year 2000, an African nation would win the World Cup. And obviously that hasn't come to fruition as yet. But I can understand where he's coming from with all the talent pool that they have in Africa right now. So you're Ghanaian, as you can tell by your surname, and you've been out to Ghana and you do a lot of work out there. Do you want to just give us a little summary about what you do in Ghana and what your vision is for the future?
Yeah, so like I find I want to touch based on kind of what you said. So like Pele's vision was that obviously an African side will win the World Cup by 2000. And I'm going to say that it was premature, but I understood obviously where he was coming from. But I think what has taken place from 2000 or certainly pre-2000 up until now, and although I do believe it can be improved on a lot more, is that some of the infrastructures are beginning to actually they're being laid, and whether that's by anyway, some of the infrastructure are being laid, and I'll give you a good example of that because you mentioned talent. So, oh my God, the Right to Dream Academy, that is a great example of some of the foundations of that are currently being laid in Africa and specifically Ghana. And I think they've actually got an academy in Egypt, and I think they have the idea of actually having an academy in the UK. But in regards to Ghana or even Egypt, I think what you're finding now is there are kids who are now being educated, kids who are now being receiving the correct coaching, and in so they're now becoming of the level, and they're actually now finding opportunities and finding clubs. Now, although Thomas Partey didn't come from the Right to Dream Academy, he's a great example of kind of what I'm referring to, because Thomas Partey left Ghana, I think, at the age of 15, went to Atletico Madrid, and then from there became the player he is now. You know, he moved for 50 million from Atletico Madrid to Arsenal. And I think what you're finding is a number. In fact, it might not be something that a lot of light has been shed on, but a number of those moves are quietly happening, like in Europe. So a good example would be Kudus Mohammed. Now, I didn't watch Liverpool Ajax recently, but I've been watching Kudus for a long time, and his move has been very interesting as well. So he's gone from the Right to Dream Academy, then he went to Norgeland, because I think Right to Dream owned Norgeland or something along those lines. And then from there he went to Ajax. Now, it is only a matter of time, whether it's 2-3 years time, where he's got another big move in him. So I know he was linked to Liverpool, I think it was maybe 2 summers ago. People are definitely keeping tabs on players like him. There's another one, Sulemana, I think he usually plays on the right-hand side for Norgeland, I believe it is. Or I think he might have recently made a move from Norgeland to another club as well. But there are a number of kids or players coming out of Ghana I think people need to keep an eye on. And I think it's infrastructures like the Right to Dream Academy, which are providing opportunity and also almost a blueprint as to some of the things that should be taking place across the continent. And I guess these are the things that I'm quite passionate about, and these are things that I've got my designs on, really. So my intention, and I guess what I've been doing for a number of years, because obviously I spoke on seeing Ghanaian players or young players, obviously in the academy and stuff like that in 2010. And obviously I always believed come 2022 or in 10, 15 years time, we're going to see a number of the diaspora actually playing in academies that are very, very high level, potentially representing England. And I guess like making the story maybe a little bit quick or a little bit faster or cut into the chase is just seeing the Hudson-Odois who represented England, but at the same time is now considering switching his allegiance. You've got the Lamptey, who's recently switched his allegiance. You've got Iñaki Williams. For a number of years, the call's been coming in. He should be switching his allegiance. And I think what's really, really unique about Ghana, or even a lot of African African countries, is that like the diaspora, or you got a number of the diaspora who are in places like England, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and across Europe. So we have, oddly, a bigger pool to choose from. So we got a pool in Ghana to choose from, and we got a pool in these countries in Europe to choose from. And I guess what's happening is we become the beneficiary of a system where academy system is in England, Germany, France, etc., etc., etc. And then so it gives countries like Ghana, Nigeria, and other countries in the continent the opportunity to become better nations. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, the infrastructures are slightly being improved in countries like Ghana. And in so, like quietly, we're on the up. And although it can't be seen on a massive scale, there are things that are taking place. And that's what gives me hope for the future, and why I believe there's a bold and there's a great future for football in Africa. But kind of like specifically as to what I want to do, I mean, I kind of want to replicate some of the things that are taking place with the Right to Dream Academy. So in 2 years ago, I was very fortunate to have some assistance with someone who works with the first team at Brentford Football Club, who gave me loads of kit. I took it to Ghana, did a lot of donation. I worked with 1 or 2 professional football clubs in regards to coaching and things of that nature. Last year, the Christmas just gone, again, went out to Ghana, did some coaching, obviously, with some of the professional football clubs out there. Obviously, did a lot of mentoring and things of that nature. Held a charity game and worked in partnership, actually, with 1 or 2 podcasts in this country in regards to actually raising money to give to clubs and obviously to the community in Ghana as well. So these are the type of things that I've been working over the past couple of years. But as well as that, and you can obviously check out the website teamghanaeu.com, where my intention over the past 4 or 5 years is I understood that I had to take baby steps. So I can't just come in and just make loads of noise. And my job, as well as educating myself, was to educate other people. So my intention, like week by week or month by month, was to educate people on subjects which they may not be aware of. So I made the intention of actually, let me create a podcast where I give people bite-sized information. And I went from doing that to actually, let me write an article once a month. And just touching very briefly on even one or even some of those articles, one of them was named, or had a theme as to what would Brazil do? What would Nigeria do if they had the resources Ghana had? So Brazil, like very briefly, like Edu. So there was a documentary on Brazil and how they became successful and won the Copa America. So Edu, and I guess the reason why he's been employed by Arsenal is that he was a great coordinator at Brazil, and he managed and did things in Brazil to make Brazil successful. So he coordinated a number of things in Europe, whether it's camps and things of that nature. So Brazil had the best chance of being successful in the Copa America. And I think it's those sort of things which I've been referring to as to the diaspora being in this country. A lot of coordination needs to take place so the relationship can be a lot better and we have a better chance of being successful. So I use the theme of what would Brazil do? What would Nigeria do? What would England do? And things of that nature, so people have an understanding of where we are and perhaps the things we can or should do in the future to be a better country.
That's brilliant. I just want to applaud you on the great work you're doing back there. Bath Time's asking the question. I think it's on point. He's saying, does Andrew think there's any truth in Wenger's statements that if Mbappe had been born in Africa like his dad, he wouldn't have become a world-class striker? And
I think, just answering that very quickly, I think he would have been a phenomenal talent. But I think sometimes we need to be kind of honest. And I guess, so short answer, yes and no. I think he still would have been a phenomenal talent. But who knows? Because the resources are not quite available in Africa. So I think he's Senegalese and maybe Moroccan or Algerian. Because those sort of resources are not necessarily available in those countries, like he might not have been able to fulfill his potential. And I guess that's kind of the argument or the conversations I'm trying to have, at this moment in time, as to let Ghana, whether it's Jamaica or any other country, actually know we have a massive opportunity as to whether it's, that's what Nketiah's named there. And Nketiah, Hudson-Odoi, a number of those kids are being developed in these countries here. And they may not have the opportunity to represent England, but they have a fantastic opportunity to represent the country of their heritage. And I think they should take that opportunity. And that will raise the level a little bit more. Then the generation after will raise it a little bit more. And then before you know it, the foundations have been laid with a number of other contributing factors. So like taking Ghana, so like the Pele thing of team will win the World Cup by 2000. No, that hasn't happened. And that is not something that should be laughed at. But guess what? I do believe this World Cup, actually, I don't even know what the challenges will be in this World Cup. But I guarantee you in the next, we're in 2022. In 20 years' time, there will be a massive, I don't want to say a massive assault. Now, I'm going to put a bold statement out here.
Put it out there.
In 20 years' time, you're going to see an African side in a World Cup final.
Wow. So Footmoss is saying here, Will Hudson-Odoi, Eddie Nketiah play for Ghana. What do you think? I think you've answered that. Emma Kay, how you doing? She said, I think it's really difficult for these players picking which country to play for, especially when you have a good connection with both sides. I know that I would find it insanely difficult. Gavin Ward say, do you see switching alliances causing problems for Ghanaian football? I only mention this because I came up on the Man United agenda the other day around the Declan Rice example with Ireland. Football Master saying you're missing out on the best cheap seed talent from Canada, soccer, fastest, best team in the world, cheap talent, glint to Euro clubs, way more than England's missing the boat. Anthony Herb saying, good stream, Omondi, you're the right person to do this interview. Getting facts and good info for us viewers. Keep me coming in. And Tyron saying, I wish more players play for their country of heritage. We haven't got long left. We've got 5 minutes. But Andrew, you've got to come back because you can see the response you're getting here from all the guys in the comments here. It's great what you're doing. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. I know you guys in the comments want to ask questions, but I want to ask a couple of questions. So what's it like grassroots in Ghana right now? If there's a young talented player, are there young leagues? Are there sort of under fives leagues? Is it like competitive? How do you play? Is there an under sort of 17s Ghanaian team, under 15s Ghanaian team? Are there many good coaches? Are ex-pros who've made a lot of money going back and giving back to football? How can this be achieved where we can get to a final in the next 20 years? I mean, what needs to happen at grassroots level? If you can just have a quick summary on that, please.
So even my statement was very, very bold. And with what you said, that made me look back and think to myself, that was a very, very bold statement, because I still think there's a lot of work to be done in regards to that. So like, I remember I had an interview with someone who came out of the the academy I mentioned it previously. The one in Ghana, apologies, I completely forgot the name of it. And he was telling me, like, sometimes you can find there are kids who are just like in the same side based on their size and not necessarily due to age. I'm going to say that happens with some of the football. My knowledge of youth football in Ghana is not massive and it's not extensive, but what I do know is that I feel the structure to it can be improved a lot. And the question that I pose, or the information I'm looking for, is I want to know the amount of participants that participate in Ghanaian football this year, last year, the year before. I think those stats are really, really important, because you'll never be able to grow the game if you don't know those type of stats. And also what I would say is, based on some of my research, is that I know that, like Spain, I know there's a bit of misinformation as to that, because people say Spain is the most qualified coaches in the world. But the reason why they're successful is because they have some of the most qualified coaches in the world. And because of that, kids have greater accessibility to good coaching. And I feel once Ghana and other countries across the continent improve their coaching, whether it's by mentoring or whether it's by qualification, then kids in Ghana will have better access to coaching, and in so will have better players, and it will give us the better opportunity to be successful at youth level and then go on to obviously challenge for major honours.
Just to add, I think like my parents from Jamaica, and the football, there is a league out there, but it's not a very good league. The pitches are terrible. And FIFA, I was in New Zealand playing football out there, and I got some really good insight into FIFA and the corruption that goes on. A lot of money sent there, but it's not sort of given to the grassroots. You don't see much. And this is like in 22 years ago I was out there, and it was really bad then. And I know in Jamaica, I mean, they're good at tricks and they like to nuts people and do things. But when it comes to structure, that kind of thing, it's all over the place, and people are kicking each other up in the air, and it's got to be really, still to this day, it hasn't really developed. I know my uncle used to play and manage a team out there in the National League as well. So I'm just really disappointed, because there is a good talent pool out there in the Caribbean as well. Look what happened. Dwight York, for example, he was picked out just from a tour. Graham Taylor spotted him. So there's so much talent worldwide. I just think the FIFA do need to invest a lot more money, grassroots wise, and to get these players, the best out of these players. Like you're saying with Mbappe, he's lucky to be brought up in France, where he can maximize his potential and that kind of thing. But I think you're doing a wonderful job. We've got some really positive comments here about it. They're saying great minds, says Omondi, so Super Nick. Bath Time. Now, me and Bath Time do a tactical show called The Eye Test, where we sort of try to analyze games tactically. And I'd like for you to come on with us and join us to give your insight of tactically what we're seeing in the Premiership. We sort of usually cover Man United games or things of that ilk, So he's saying fantastic show and guest. Well done, Andrew and Omondi. Time permitting now, we've only got a couple of minutes left. But Andrew, will you come back and join us? You guys, 100%. Do you want to see Andrew again?
100%. I'd love to be back on. I feel I tried to sandwich in as much as possible.
Yeah.
But I would love to come back on.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. I think it's hard. I think if we do like over a few weeks and do a series like this, you can get all your stuff out, because it's hard. Like you say, time goes really quickly, and it is late, and people need to get to their bed and everything else. But we'll be back, guys. We'll definitely be back. I'm definitely going to be hitting up Andrew to come back on the show and get some more insight into what you're doing, the good work you're doing in Spain, in Europe, in Africa mainly, and obviously your experience that you've had in the UK. And I'm surprised, Andrew. I thought I knew a lot about you, but you really opened my eyes. I didn't realize. What were your badges? Where are you at with your badges right now, by the way?
So that's another. So I've actually only got my level 2, but I was on my level 3, my UEFA B, in 2005. And I guess with just life in. I didn't complete my UEFA B then, and I tried to get it back onto it this year, but unfortunately I didn't get onto it. So I'm hoping next year I'll be one of the cohort as part of the UEFA program.
Brilliant. And I want to trump you on that. I do think, especially with the climate in the World Cup this winter, I think an African side can take it to a final. I really do. If they're organised and get their act together, most definitely. It's just a shame as well with qualification, because some good sides aren't making it. It's so tough to get through that qualification rounds. I think I don't think Egypt made it this year. Did
No.
they?
So I think this time around, Senegal are the strongest African side going into the tournament.
Okay. So they're the team to look out for.
And I know Ghana beat Nigeria, but I will say Nigeria are probably no, along with Egypt. No, so I'll say Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, and then Nigeria. And I know Ghana obviously pipped Nigeria obviously to get into the World Cup, but I'll say Nigeria are in the mix as well as to some of the best African sides.
Okay, so we're going to sign off now. So Andrew, can you let people know where to find you, and if you want to give a shout out to any sort of socials or anything like that?
Yeah, so you can find me at Andrew Mensah Jr. That's Andrew Mensah Jr. though, on Instagram, on Twitter. Yeah, and I think I'm even going to find myself on TikTok sometime soon anyway. So yes, you can find me there. Also, you can find the Ghanaian website, teamghanaeu.com, and also my personal website, which is andrewmensahjr.com.
And you can also find Andrew on the Man United Agenda and Full-Time Sports Network. From now on, we're signing you up. I've been scouting you. You got the job. Andrew, God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been fantastic, and we will be seeing you again. As you can see by the feedback from the comments, they love you, and hopefully you won't disappoint them, and you will return. But as for now, we're signing out. It's been a short show, but we will be back. And for now, you can join us tomorrow, 8:30 on the Man United Agenda. And make sure you check out Full-Time Sports Network as well, because they're delivering some great shows every day. But for now, we're going out. Good night. God bless. Bye-bye.
Guys, take care.